All right. Well, welcome to Inner Join. This is a show where we dive deeper into the world of data governance and data management. I'm your host, Shinji Kim, the founder and CEO of SelectStar. SelectStar is a data discovery and governance platform with an automated data catalog, lineage, and documentation. So today, I'm really excited to have David Gelman and Danny Lee from Brooklyn Data. Please comment on the chat if you have any questions during the show. And David and Danny, welcome to Inner Join.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Really excited to be here.
I wanted to kick off with a quick intro. If you can tell us more about your role at Brooklyn Data and how you got into data in the first place.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick it off, Danny. So my name is
Sure.
David Gelman. I'm currently a director of data solutions and the AI and ML practice lead at Brooklyn Data. And Brooklyn Data is the data consulting arm of Velir, which is a digital agency. The way that I got into data is actually a little bit by accident. I decided I really wanted to go to grad school, and I went to grad school to actually study political philosophy, and was required to take a statistics class, which I hadn't taken before. So at age 24, I took my first statistics class, really liked it, got exposed to programming for the first time. And then I got really heavily into econometrics. When I went to continue my PhD, it was all empirical research based. And I finished my PhD. It was 2017. It was sort of the tail end of the era of big data and data science. And I figured this looks pretty cool. And that's how I got into it.
Very cool.
Awesome. Yeah. So hi everyone. My name is Danny Lee. I joined Brooklyn Data about 3 years ago. I'm currently the director of growth and strategy here at Brooklyn Data /Velir. I work very closely with Tanner Pratt, who's our VP of growth, and we help our data teams to kind of uncover business opportunities through data. My journey into data was pretty unconventional. I started out having a very diverse work history. I worked in state legislature, founded a clothing brand, worked in fine printing, and spent time in contemporary fashion before I really landed into data and tech. But I found that over the years, my experience, my varying experiences really shaped how I think about data. Allow me to kind of see the connections and opportunities others may overlook. That said, when I started in tech, I was a QA automation engineer at a data and digital consultancy. But my curiosity kind of quickly pulled me towards client challenges, and I moved into an associate director of client services role. Really helping businesses kind of make sense of their data and build practical solutions. I was an early adopter of HEAP, so product and behavioral analytics. Really dove into data activation and kind of explored deploying predictive modeling. And one of the key highlights there is I worked with a brand called Tommy John, and we leveraged market basket analysis, correlation regression analyses for our marketing spend, and implemented demand planning for demand forecasting to kind of enable them to scale from 50 to 150 million in just a few years. So that was a really kind of exciting time, in my career. That said, at the end of the day, I really kind of leaned into my curiosity and diverse work experience to kind of help me see those patterns and opportunities that others might miss. And I'm always looking for creative ways to use data and solve problems, and help our data clients grow.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. And I think we might have lost David. I'm not sure. Maybe just an internet issue. I'm hoping that he'll just come back soon. Maybe Danny, if you can share a little bit more about Brooklyn Data and the types of projects that you've been involved, since also our topic is around AI and AI ready data. That'll be a good start.
Yeah. So as David had mentioned before, Brooklyn Data is a full stack data consultancy. We're the data consulting arm of Velir, which the agency itself is a very well regarded digital consultancy, specializing in data driven digital transformations. David and I have been, spearheading the the initial efforts here at when regarding AI and machine learning and implementing and deploying large language models for our clients. And we're pretty opinionated. We found that the approach here is to take very pointed steps that are targeted in very narrow use cases that action on compounding value, compounding strategic value, where we believe that AI, even in just embarking on AI projects, really kind of lend to and cater to a forcing function for companies to kind of invest in better data practices and governance and analytics. And that value is felt even before an AI or data science model is even fully operational. We see that organizations already benefit from those early investments from better reporting, just due to improved data quality and trust. So that's our kind of like perspective and stance in this space. I think I don't want to caveat it as like, hey, AI is a moving target, but and still ever kind of growing and maturing. But right now, this is where we think that a well structured and thoughtful way of deploying AI is rooted in these foundations.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah, I was wondering if there is I guess you mentioned about you guys have a very pointed approach. Like, is there a client that you're thinking about and like a specific problem that they were going through that you guys kind of like really, took a different approach to solve?
What's funny? We and interesting is that we actually have our own internal use case that we initially deployed for, and that was basically a discovery AI agent that enabled us as an organization to kind of scale our capabilities in the sense of we do these long discoveries, and these discoveries are typically structured around interviews, and this is like our foundational way of really kind of understanding the organization and the business and the client before we embark on any sort of data project. And in order to find efficiencies, we deployed an agentic AI solution that kind of structures and that processes transcripts in a way that is of value to us and how we like to conduct our discoveries and support and facilitate in the aid of building our discovery reports and roadmap recommendations and solutions. And we found that to be incredibly valuable. It scales our organization and team to be able to leverage our more expertise. Like, we like to be more hands-on and kind of thoughtful during these types of engagements, and like leveraging AI in this sense of being a supportive helper tool really kind of allows us to focus on those values more and more. And that said, like we bring this agentic AI approach to our go-to-market strategy, our go-to-market function, as well as allowing our ICs to be a little bit more present as well. That said, that's a really strong use case for us. But
Sorry,
as far as
what's the agentic AI solution you guys are using?
so in the early days, I had initially created a Zapier workflow. And I leveraged Zapier to build an agentic AI workflow. We then kind of transitioned over to that workflow over to Snowflake. We leveraged Snowflake Cortex and the Streamlit app and built an AI agent that now is a little bit more productionalized and more scalable and replicable. And we could replicate that experience. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that this is something that everyone in the company is using for like planning their projects and things like that. Is that right?
Yes, it's we use it to, like I mentioned before, be more present because
Can you share a little bit more about how it works, or like what specific use cases where you're
Yeah.
using the agents for?
Sure. So we embarked on an AI readiness assessment with a B2B cannabis marketplace, and we leveraged our discovery agent tool to kind of process those transcripts that we had during those interviews, and
Mm-hmm.
myself, David, and our sales engineer, Arnis, who has a specialty in AI and large language models and deploying large language models. We were able to, one, be present during those discussions and interviews, ask thoughtful questions, and really kind of listen and have that kind of empathetic approach, while being able to know that and trust that we could leverage this discovery tool agent that we have to process those transcripts as a supplemental add-on to kind of our approach to building this discovery report and kind of facilitate further discussions. So as we used it, the tool really kind of allowed us to process information very quickly, ask thoughtful questions. Oh, looks like David's back. David, we're just getting into how we're leveraging our AI agent internally for our business use cases. And maybe you could jump in here. I'm just kind of going through the discovery process of how we leveraged our tool. And if you want to kind of talk about the B2B use case that we did for a large cannabis company, that'd be really helpful. Just to give
Yeah,
a
I
little bit more
wanted to learn
context.
more about like what type of workflows that the agentic AI is automating. And you mentioned that as like the discovery agent. So like you
What does
mentioned
that mean?
about, yeah, what does that mean when you say
Yeah,
it processes
yeah.
transcripts?
So,
Like,
so the way that BDC does a lot of our engagements is we start with what we call a discovery period. And the discovery period is really trying to understand, like, okay, you go through the business development process and you have a pretty good idea of what it is you're walking into. But the truth of the matter is, like, until you have things signed and you have agreements in place and NDAs and things like that, like there's going to be a limit to like what you really get to see and what you really get to understand. And through the discovery process, we really get into the nitty gritty of like, who are the stakeholders? What are the business problems? What are the true underlying problems? Because the problems that people come to you with are not actually always what their real problems are.
mm-hmm.
And that's what the discovery process is meant to uncover. So what does that look like? That looks like a lot of one-on-one or one-on-two interviews where we go through and we talk to various people, from executives down to junior devs. Really, it's like whoever is touching the problem space, like those are the people you want to be speaking to. So you can think about, like, you get notes that you're taking as you go, you get transcripts that are coming out, screen shares. You also get access to certain documents that you might be interested in, getting to look at schemas, getting to look at repos, things like that. And so it's a lot of information to take in really, really quickly, because typically we're trying to do a discovery in under 4 weeks. And if you're trying to deliver something at the end of 4 weeks, that really means you're trying to get everything done in the first like 2.5 weeks, and then refine and iterate and figuring out like where you have to like go back and follow up and dig deeper. So at the moment, particularly just that interview side of things generates a lot of content.
Mm.
And I tend to think of myself as like a pretty organized person. Some people would say that that's a slight understatement. And it just can be, even with like a very good management system and like going through that and being very used to it, it can be tough to translate that information into actionable insights, or even more
Right.
crucially, share that with other members of the team. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'll give you an example as it applies to the company that Danny is referring to that we spoke to. So one thing that came up over and over again was a data quality issue, and specifically with one way that they had set up the capture of customer data. And so we wanted to be able to talk to some of the experts that we have internally, but like 4 or 5 different people out of like the 16 we talked to had talked about this specific issue, and each one of them had talked about it slightly differently. So that would be a lot of material to have to go. I mean, that's like 6 or 7 hours worth of interviews to have to comb through. And instead, we used the discovery agent. So we fed notes through the discovery agent. We fed the transcripts through, and we were able to basically come up with a really succinct and comprehensive overview of what the situation was for this specific thing that we could send to one of our colleagues and then get their perspective on. And this saved us a ton of time. So
That makes sense.
that is, I think that's probably the more complete.
Very cool. And I think that is actually a really good use of LLM agents, especially, like, different people talking about different things, trying to consolidate and synthesize it into the right core components. Yeah, I think it's very important. Did anyone from the interview actually said data quality and talk about like what that matters, or did no one like mention data quality, but you have to kind of hash out that it's actually a data quality issue?
Truth be told, I can't remember if they said the words data quality or not.
Okay.
But for us, one of the things that we had been, for this project in particular, that had been tasked with was how can we leverage AI, whether that's Gen AI or machine learning, to help us increase revenue, right? And it was like this really core thing. And so one of the places that my brain immediately went to is like, how can we leverage what they know about the way that their customers interact with the platform to be able to try to optimize some things, like create more personalization and do all these things. But when you have all these people telling you that like, we don't trust the data that we're capturing about customer behavior, like, that really then changes the amount and kinds of impacts that you can have with your models, because you can't trust that the behavior is being captured correctly or fully. There's no point in building a machine learning model on top of something like that. And so that's where the data quality concern came up. And I think even if they didn't say the words data quality, they said, I have concerns about the data. And I think that was, if someone's telling you I have concerns about the data, that's certainly a big red siren going off.
Yep. Because that usually doesn't mean that we don't have data. It's really we can't use the data. This really actually gets into the core topic of our show today, which is AI-ready data. Companies want to use AI to make their business better, grow faster, but they get blocked or they're not sure where to start. A lot of it comes down to that they may or may not have the right data or surroundings on how data can be utilized for AI. So can you share what your definition is for AI ready data and why AI ready data is important?
Totally. I don't think there is one. I'll start by saying I don't think there is one definition right now. I think that something that is really hard at the moment is that every firm knows that they need to be approaching this. And if they don't think that, they're either getting that pressure from investors or it's there's no escaping it in the zeitgeist. It is there. And so I think a thing that trips people up is thinking that to do AI, again, in either guise as Gen AI or ML, people think that everything needs to be AI ready, that their entire company needs to be AI ready. And that's something that I just do not believe. And so for me, it means AI ready data means that there is at least a subset of data that you have high belief in the accuracy and completeness of, that you can build a data product on top of. And when I mean say data product, I mean anything that uses data as the key input to generate anything of value. So a data product could be a data mart that you're doing, traditional BI out of, or at least that's how I think about it. A data product can also be a machine learning model that is telling you, for example, like how much dry ice I need to order in order to be able to ship out to my consumers, ship out my product to a consumer next week and be able to keep it fresh and deliver it without being rotten. The
Yep.
truth of the matter is, like, it's if you have suboptimal data, like, you're going to create a suboptimal product, and that has really detrimental effects to what you're trying to do.
Yeah, totally
Yeah,
makes sense. We actually have a comment here. Vishal asked, could there be a ballpark standardized form of AI ready data? If somebody says AI ready data, could we at least say, oh, that means XYZ?
I'm going to have to respond with a data scientist's absolutely favorite answer of all time, which is it depends. And I think that it depends because there is no ballpark, or sorry, there is no standardized use case. The requirements for structured versus unstructured data, I think, are different. The standards between analytical data and operational data are different. The standards between something that is in like a very sensitive vertical like healthcare or finance, I think is frankly different than potentially what it is for something like retail. I mean, I think we're talking about the same things that we always traditionally talk about when we talk about data quality. It's freshness, completeness, timeliness. Where I think it gets harder is, and I think what Vishal is potentially asking here, I'm going to just pretend that this is what he's really asking, is there a certain level deeper of quality that we can say, like, past this threshold, you're good to go? And I just don't think that we're there yet. And I also think that different models have different tolerance for inaccuracies. And when we say inaccuracies, I think there's a whole host of things that we could mean when we say that, right? Is inaccuracy somebody who fat fingered a manual input and like it's a value that's way out of range for what you traditionally see? Is it like a free text field in a text document that is filled with like a cat walking on a keyboard, right? Like I just think it's such a broad area that it's hard to say like we could do it this way.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it obviously depends on the use case. But I think where the way that I see this is that, there you can kind of declare it. You cannot say, oh, our data is now AI ready. There's no such thing like that. But you can declare, here are some data sets that are approved, or here are the critical data elements that are now being governed and we're tracking quality that can be used for purposes of integrating into an AI application or build AI, agentic applications on top, things like that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I mean, another perspective to kind of take or approach to take is kind of working backwards from like what you're trying to solve for. For example, like at Tommy John, this was back at my prior agency, we rolled out market basket analysis. And before we kind of embarked on that journey, we had a lot of discussion around like, would this market basket analysis result in, business value? And we went through the thought experiment of like, okay, we need to find incremental revenue. We have a ton of SKUs. We have a lot of transaction data. What is the state of that data right now? And can we leverage it to train that market basket analysis algorithm? And I think if you can work backwards from the goal, it will also kind of give you an idea and notion of, what you may need to have as like AI data ready data sets, or in the sense of like machine learning and training is our data sets of quality to be able to train that model and result in trustworthy outputs.
Yeah, for sure. So let's actually maybe define what we mean and why companies end up misinterpreting their needs around AI versus ML. I think there is you both have mentioned both words separately. So when clients come to you ask about what they want to do with AI, you may say, well, that makes sense versus, oh, it should be done differently. Can you give some examples of what this common misconceptions look like and how clients should think about when they say they need AI versus something else?
So I think right now, a substantial, I would not say half, but like a substantial number of prospective clients come to us and they say, I'm interested in AI. And the answer is like, yes, they are interested in AI, but they think they're asking about Gen AI. And what they're really asking about is machine learning. And I think that there has been such a rush to embrace. Let me reframe that. I think that there has been an unbelievable amount of progress and there is tremendous promise in Gen AI. But I think in terms of distinct and tangible business value, machine learning is still probably a little bit easier to quantify right now. And I think where a lot of customers are in their data journeys is they're still looking for predictive and advanced analytics on the back of what I would think of as like more traditional data science and machine learning. And it's about understanding what their use case is. And I think right now it's still in companies need to walk before they run. And that is often where we find ourselves. And that said, like some companies, Gen AI is definitely the right answer. It unlocks a lot of things, but I also think it's harder to start with Gen AI for a lot of the customers that we interact with.
Why? Is it just a technical issue that they're not ready for, or is it more on the business case development side?
I would say the answer is both. So it's certainly on the business case, use case definition side, but it's also on just the general data maturity side of things. So not having a holistic understanding of how their infrastructure needs to shift to support that, how they need to have data governance or data quality concerns either addressed or even implemented, what the team's skill set might be, or even what the firm's appetite for cost and risk is, and then knowing what it is that they're trying to do. I think the biggest problem is that organizations think that AI or ML is infallible, and they're not thinking about it as an investment the way that I think it probably should, in the sense of like you're investing in capacity or you're investing in a capability, but it's still a bet. And sometimes bets pay off and sometimes they don't.
Yep, makes sense. Speaking of use cases, are there any, like a clear business cases or kind of your go-to use cases that you think about or that you talk about with clients uh, for Gen AI versus ML?
Yeah, so I think for Gen AI, the thing that I think about the most is like how to make knowledge sharing work better within an organization. So similar to how we're using it, I think another thing that I think a lot about is interacting with their analytics and trying to like lower the barrier to action off of the data to make the data more valuable. Because like data without insight is just a cost. The thing that actually matters is the value you can get based on the action. And so things that actually allow you to have quicker time to action are the things that I think are valuable.
Okay. Danny, do you want to add an example on the ML side?
Yeah, I think just going back to just my experiences at Tommy John, it's that we were intentionally looking for opportunities to find incremental revenue, and we were kind of set with that as the data team. We were kind of set with the task of, okay, what are some creative ways we can kind of approach this question or this problem. And I think it really drives from the sense of, I think, culture as at an organization, that kind of also attribute to a strong use case, right? I think to David's point earlier is like our internal adoption is also kind of a little bit split in the sense of like there is some slight resistance to leveraging AI across all of our teams, in the sense that you can't think through the lens of AI as it being or machine learning as being a replacement to the human experience. I think it's more of an augmentation of that, and I think that's where it really kind of falls into, is like ensuring that the organization, from a data culture perspective, has the willingness and open-mindedness to kind of formulate a strong use case for broader adoption. And that's kind of like where I'm thinking in the sense of the qualities of a good use case.
Sure.
I'll give it
Well,
if I could I sorry, Shinji, could I jump
Yeah,
in
go
with a
ahead.
quick example? So I think an example I really like is, like, imagine you have support tickets, for example, right? So like you have support tickets coming in and you don't really know what they're about. So like, for example, like in the UI, like you never said like, is this about this? So being able to classify the support tickets means that you can search through them much more quickly, saves a ton of time. Like that to me is a great ML use case because it has a clear, tangible ROI, which is like time saved looking for tickets. And you can tell, like, is the performance of the classifier of the tickets degrading over time? Do I have to spend more time, or like, are the tickets that the model is returning back to me not actually giving me the information I need as a product leader to be able to find the information I need? And like, okay, like my model is degraded. So like, I like that as a use case because clear ROI, when it stops working well because the experience isn't as good. And you've basically been able to build something which should hopefully uh, have knock-on effects elsewhere. So, like, what would a knock-on effect be? Well, if you have this thing that you developed as a POC, you've learned how to do that. You've learned how to put it into production. You've learned how to observe and make sure that it's still running through. Like, you've learned things as an organization. So that's a good use case for me.
Yeah, I think customer support and also like internal rev ops or sales analysis is like a very much of a like a prime use case for where Gen AI can be applied for. There's an ML side too, but I watched this demo when I went to Snowflake's user group before Sigma Computing was doing a demo around how they use a Cortex analyst in their sales teams on basically compiling all the notes that reps put in, and it can summarize what these like anything, answering questions about this client or customer, or summarizing what has happened like this week, like when you ask very specific questions of like, why did we win this deal, or like what were the main blockers on deal being delayed, like not having to like wait for a rep to look back at their notes and then get the question. I think those are really helpful use cases that really accelerates the productivity of the teams. The typical ML use cases that I usually see also with a lot of the customers that we work with, companies like Opendoor or Zometry, where they have like real-time pricing engine behind. Those are all like this like next level data science work, which is all machine learning models that takes a ton of data from both like public data, private data, all the user activities, different behavioral data into giving like a quote right away. And I think those are the types of things that we've like kind of seen, deployed a lot. And then I guess I should definitely mention the recommendation models. Anything that is like, recommendation based on your previous activities, I feel like has been these kind of traditional machine learning models that's been applied for. At the same time, with more advancement in AI, with especially around the visual processing, I think this is like something that kind of is getting taken to the next level as well. Awesome. So, like, we talked a lot about these kind of what is defined as AI ready data, where are they being utilized. So now let's talk a little bit about more of this like gaps that companies have when they are trying to apply or build AI ML internally. They've gotten now the use case that they decided they got the budget, they are now ready to go, but they need to now leap from where they are to where it's actually ready.
Sorry. So like, what are like the biggest, like now that that's
Common
done, like
gaps. Yeah, common gaps,
yeah.
and what would be kind of like the main things to look for if you are assessing, can we now go build this use case? What are the main things that you would say are companies lacking that they should fix first?
They're lacking a sense of who should own these things. They're lacking a sense of where that lives. They're lacking a sense of how do you go from we've identified this to how do we get value out of it, which to me should be part of the use case
Yeah.
generation process, but I think oftentimes it's not. And these questions, I think, are really process questions. And I think that's where a lot of companies fall down is like, how do you just start doing it? And for me, the answer is you just start. You start with something really, really small that you feel like is manageable. And I think where, like, I know that in this scenario, like we've gotten past this inertia, but even just something like I think people get very hung up on tools. And like for me, it's just like, just start. Like your firm is on AWS, like good, use that. You're on GCP, good, use that. You're on Snowflake or Databricks, like whatever. Just do it and see what you can learn. But I think the gap is often in data quality. So I gave the example before about the data just like for the B2B company just like not being there for customer behavior and engagement, and that really limited the types of things that they were able to do. I think that is really widespread. Whether it's because in structured data, the actual quality is not there, whether because of missingness or lack of trustworthiness, or in unstructured data, because you just don't know where things live. And I think this is where like data lineage and data governance become so important, and discoverability, which is just like understanding like the scope of what is available and what you actually need to leverage. And again, I like the idea of starting small because like then the scope of data that you need to support it is also hopefully like relatively small compared to the entire ecosystem that could exist. And then I think the other gap that folks have is a lack of preciseness around how do they know whether or not the outcome that they've like achieved is good or not. And this, I think, is somewhere where, like, again, it gets very fuzzy, which is 90%, 95, 99% of the time, like a company is not going to build a new LLM as their product, right? And so these benchmark ways of gauging accuracy aren't always right. And so I think people forget, like, you still need a human to verify the output. You need a human to like go through and test the thing and interact with it and pressure test it and figure out where is it working well, where is it not working well, can we iterate? And I think firms forget about this and they haven't thought through. It's not just like, okay, the code is running. It's the code is running and we can get value out of it because people can use it. And I think there's a delta in their minds between these things.
So more of like the data product quality. Is it producing the right results that we're expecting so
I
that
think
it is deriving the impact that we've planned for?
yes, I think that is some. I think oftentimes people underestimate how difficult that part is.
Yeah, very true. And also, yeah, it's easily forgotten because once you start implementing it for the use case, um, then you want to just release it and go.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to keep in mind that even after you do that, you could still get results that don't work all the time when we're talking about Gen AI. I actually had this experience on ChatGPT yesterday morning. I was trying to create an image, and I couldn't get, despite my attempts at re-engineering the prompt a number of times, like I couldn't get the image I wanted, and I just had to walk away because I ran out of time for what I needed it for. So even things that are well established and like clearly generate tons of value for lots of people are not infallible.
So it feels like there is like a multi-step process that, needs to be approached to really fully get to the value of AI. You need to have the data ready, at least some of the of data that you can use for the model. And then you also, and this is just to really make it high level. And even then, you will also need to verify the results and how, if they are coming up correctly. And then you are in a good position to say this approach and investment that we made to get to the right results, like is providing value to the business. Is that right?
Yes, I think you've nailed it.
So now, how, like when you've done that, how do you know, and like where do you usually recommend updating if you are doing the iteration? Because you've started small, we kind of pieced it together. There seems to be a bit of an incremental lift.
So where do you make the decision to either
Invest more on the platform, because sometimes people, I think what you mentioned earlier, as people think about like investing in the platform first before the use case. Now if we were to approach in that use case first approach,
Mhm.
and we were to now continue to evolve that platform, how does that look like?
Yeah, so I think it depends. um yeah, I caught it. A couple of different ways. I think if you're talking about, I think one approach is, okay, start a new POC. And can this POC be something that can either accept the previous work as an input, or can this model be an input into that one? So is there a way to start building things in pieces and then chaining them together so you're creating a more dynamic experience? So for example, right, like we have our discovery agent. A great next step, I think, would be, let's take an agent that not just functions like for our discovery, but like let's build, I don't know, a RAG, say, that combs across like all the previous discoveries that we've done, all our previous implementations. And now can we enhance the output by streamlining recommendations that we have, or generating a template for a roadmap based on the discoveries? So can we start having multiple pieces of this to increase our operational efficiency even more? So that, I think, is always the next step, which is what is the next complementary thing that you can do? And is there a way to daisy chain them together to build something that is even more powerful?
Okay, makes sense. um So we talked a little bit about data quality. Where do you guys see the data lineage and governance also factor into this success of AI projects and also data quality?
Yeah. So for me, Lineage makes improved visibility into data. Lineage means that it's easier to trace and diagnose quality problems. It's also easier to uh, perpetuate improvements like through your data if you go back and you engage in that. I think also more lineage, like improved lineage means an increased ability to explain your data. And for me, better explainability also means higher trust. And then when you have higher trust, I think you're going to have more engagement and more value out of the data. So like, I know it's a couple of thoughts chained together, but like to me, it is very causal. Um, and so data lineage in what I've just spoken about, like is a way to build more, to get more value out of your data because it allows you to do these things that I think are integral to like a good data practice. And I think governance is largely the same, right? But like we mean a lot of things by governance. It could be accessibility to data. It can mean like who has the authority to do what with it. Um, and I think typically improved data governance is a symptom of a more mature organization. And I think you're just more likely to be more successful with AI, generally speaking, at a more mature organization that has thought through things like access control and discoverability and quality and all these things that we sort of I think lump together under governance. And then of course there's also the question of like who should get to use it. Not just like who can make changes to it and who can access to it, but like who gets to be the beneficiary, whether that's an individual or a system, which is also something to take into account. But I'm curious how like you are, you know, obviously keenly you spend all I'm assume you spend 95% of your time thinking about these two things. So, like, what's your perspective on it?
That's right. And I do see how this gets actually used in production environment every day. So I have a lot of thoughts on it. But to summarize, I guess for Lineage, there is a big part around how it makes your data operations and data management more automated and just having this like visibility of where the data came from, how it was transformed, where it was like originated, and to the extent of um like where is this like all going, like what's the impact, who's gonna get impacted, like a lot of that can be traced through Lineage. And also if you are also start tracking usage data on top of Lineage, so that's been like I think traditionally very helpful for the data teams. Now Lineage is starting to become a lot more important, just to have as the part of the data infrastructure and platform, because it provides the clear understanding of your like current like a data lake or data models, which is something that you can actually rely on, because most of the time the ML or the AI models that you're trying to use on top of it is like a black box. Whereas Lineage is something that you can control and you clearly see where things can be different than, for example, like what your AI will generate. And then in that perspective, actually being able to experiment through like the changes, and then also just understanding this, having that trust is really critical. Actually, Eugene just made a really good comment. It's really about data integrity, and yeah, Lineage enforces and shows this integrity of data, which is the most important. So I think that that is a big part about Lineage. Data governance, on the other hand, is also similar, but in the sense of how it enforces this curation, what is certified, what is not, and then the discoverability, so that everyone's aware what is the right ones to use versus may not be trusted. That's kind of like where I'm coming from. I used to always think data governance as so that you apply or you implement data governance so that data doesn't go out of control.
Mm.
And that's really kind of like the main goal, and where that can happen also comes through, sure, the access management, compliance, everything else. But for me, like a core of what really will enable and make a data governance more operational, not just defined policies on a document, really comes from having those actually implemented on a platform where everyone can discover and learn and understand what each of the data sets that they have access to means. So it is all supporting pillars to enable data usage and AI. Anything you want to add, Danny?
I think it's a great segue kind of into the emerging trends in AI and some of the foundational core beliefs in developing AI functionality. I think Lineage kind of is a great analogy to kind of explainable AI, right? AI showing its work so that it's no longer a black box of mystery. And to our point earlier, human in the loop. I think those two are like crucial to the adoption of AI, especially like whereas Lineage and data governance and a tool like SelectStar will help persist and perpetuate the data integrity and trust of that. So you as an end user can really understand, okay, how did AI just come to this conclusion? I would love for it to show its work and see how it kind of reasoned its way through generating that response. So that's kind of like where I see a lot of the correlation, and it's a great analogous to kind of what we're talking about when we mention Lineage in that sense.
Cool. I have a lot of more follow-up questions around like different examples and the frameworks that you guys use. But I think we did touch upon a lot of these use case driven development, as well as like focus on data quality. I want to actually close off with the question of hearing more about what you are personally most excited about today's trend in data and AI.
Well, I think I kind of touched on those two trends initially. I would love to give David a chance to kind of opine on his excitement, but happy to kind of keep continuing on those two areas if you would like.
So I feel like if you had asked me 3 months ago, I would have given the stock answer of like AI agents, right? Since that is like the thing. I think right now there isn't one thing I'm most excited about. I think what I'm most excited about is that there. I guess the thing I'm most excited about is the fact that like the hype cycle, like I think it's been tempered, but it hasn't died down. And I think to me that shows the promise of longevity. And that is exciting to me that we like maybe are through the peak hype, but it's still going. Um, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing to like have people be embracing this and trying it. And there's obviously 1,001 companies. There's 1,001 new things every week. It feels like it's impossible to keep up, but people are really smart. People are creative, and seeing what unfolds and comes out of it and is ready to be used is the thing I'm most excited about. Right. I guess I'm choosing to see the world of AI as a place to be really hopeful right now.
Yeah.
Instead of approaching it as like something to be jaded about or cynical about, I'm like choosing to be very hopeful about it.
But when you mentioned the AI agents used to be, what you were excited about, was there like why was that?
Um, I would say it's because like it's easier for me to see the value, right? Like LLM, like it's great, but like the LLM doesn't actually help me do anything as like its own thing. It needs to be packaged as part of something else for me to personally be able to get value out of it, or for a customer to be able to get, I think, a lot of value, like for the everyday customer to get a lot of value out of it. And so agents like still very exciting. because that, I think, is the promise of how to harness some of the things that people have been talking about the last 2 years to actually make it approachable and usable. And I think I don't want to say agents just because it seems so cliche already. So I'm
Yep.
doing it just to try to do so. I'm not saying that just so I have something different to say.
Eugene Yang also had another comment here to Danny's point is AI logging available to see the calculation. I would say AI, definitely like I think the more recent models like O1, and if you use like deep research or other services, they are really putting a really good reasoning behind how they are doing step by step, what they are referring to, what information they got from where, and like why. And I think that's starting to get there. So I think that's a good point, and certainly is improving as well. And this is why data quality gets more important, right? That's starting to become clear that it's not just the black box, but it is going to operate with what you are actually putting into the model.
And I think that's certainly like that's very geared towards like Gen AI. And I think this has been a big challenge in like data science consulting for a long time, which is when you're engaging with your customers, what kind of explainability do you need in the model? And that obviously has huge implications. So like,
Mm.
Maybe you could squeeze more performance or better accuracy out of a neural net. But if you really need to be able to explain something to the stakeholders or to, if it's customer facing and for some reason, like they need to understand why an answer is generated, or for regulatory reasons, even like you're not going to do that. You're going to do, I don't know, a logit so that you can get really good like marginal effects out of it and be able to surface that. So I think that's like another place where like I think we've been very focused on the Gen AI, but it's something that is just as applicable to machine learning.
Yeah, actually, to use Gen AI in reverse is to have that to explain the machine learning models or the data science models or the SQL query. I think that is also one of the good use cases of Gen AI.
Yeah, actually, what's funny is that we actually did that for in Cortex. Actually, we developed I keep using the same reference here, market basket analysis, but we deployed Snowflake Cortex on top of that in a Streamlit application, and for the whole intent and purpose of enabling data scientists to tell better data stories to kind of their stakeholders and business users. I think having a very focused and targeted approach of deploying large language models on very pointed data sets only add to more accuracy and the reduction of like potential hallucinations. But as a practitioner, I think for David and for those who are the practitioners, it really enables those folks to be able to kind of be thoughtful about how to approach telling that data story, gleaning those insights from those models, but thinking it from a different lens and being able to kind of portray those stories across different personas throughout their organization.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. Yeah, I think for me, like I'm kind of in that boat of I don't know if I should call it AI agents, but um, I guess these are AI agents. The ways that we can like next level automate the work that we do and the synthesizing of the information to applying that into action is huge. And it's more of like Danny, you were talking about like how it used to be like the Zapier workflow that is now like, your agent. Like I think that is kind of like the transition that we're now starting to see in the market that I'm personally very excited about because I'm generally a very impatient person. And if an agent is going to give me an answer like right away or within the 5 minutes instead of like, me having to like wait for like a job to finish or someone else to like check their email and then get back to me, like I think there are lots of things that I'm just like starting to think about where we are going to start putting these in place in our company as well. So, well, that wraps up our conversation. Thank you so much both for being here. This was a lot of fun. And anyone else who might have more questions, feel free to add the comments on the LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us. It was really great.
Thank you. It was really great.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.